Thank you again. I'm Leslie Rand Pickett, and I am the Director of Graduate Career Services and have met with many of you. I look forward to continuing to work with you. And tonight we are really pleased to have one of our recent alumni to join us and give her perspective on her own job search. She was, yeah, there's Diksha. We're so glad to have you, Diksha. She was in your shoes just last year. She was still a student at NC State until, I guess, December of 2016. And she is going to talk a bit about the process that she went through to find her full-time job and what kind of role she's in now. And so, again, I have some questions planned, but please chime in with yours as well. Now I'm going to turn it over to Diksha for her to give a formal introduction about who she is and what her role is now. Take it away.
Hi guys, I'm Diksha. I'm in Photos team at Google. My work is to develop tools that is used by developers for faster and efficient development. In simple, I'm in Photos infrastructure team, tackling problems like system health, latency, development framework, testing framework, and logging.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Can you tell us, Diksha, a little bit more about your experience in your search for that particular position that you're in now? Like, what time of the year did you apply, and when did you interview, and when did you receive an offer? I think students a lot of times have questions about the timeline. When should I expect these kinds of things to happen, and what are the steps in the process?
Yeah, so my search for this position was particularly very adventurous. It was fun at times, but boring at times as well. Boring at times when I had to sit and prepare for the interviews. Fun when I had to go out, when I got to go visit places and meet great people. I think I started applying for the jobs early in the third semester. For Google particularly, I started applying in September when the jobs opened up. I had my first 2 telephonic interviews in October, and my on-site, I scheduled my on-site such that it was after all other interviews, and it was in the month of November. And I got my offer 1 week after I did my on-site.
Well, so it was pretty quick once you had the on-site interview.
Right. It basically my on-site interview was in November. It was actually not pretty quick. It was towards the end of the semester, but then I was caught up with all other interviews, and yeah.
So speaking of other interviews, how many other interviews did you do during your full-time search?
So I think I had 5 interviews. I had been to a lot of conferences as well during the third semester, and I had few of my interviews in the conferences itself. Then I got to go to Seattle for my Amazon interview, and then I also went to New York for my Bloomberg interview.
That's great. So you had 3 that were on site then?
Right.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. So tell me what you thought was the most challenging about the full-time search process.
So so generally I think what people think is getting calls is the most challenging part, but I'd say it's basically converting the one call that you get. For me, getting calls was fairly easy. I went to some conferences like Tapia and Grace Hopper where there were recruiters and they got me some interviews. I also had my seniors in different companies, so I asked them for referrals. I think the most challenging part for me was the preparation itself. I think I'd say that I'd prepare 6 hours on an average, 6 hours a day on an average for the preparation itself. So that was definitely the most challenging part for me.
Thank you so much. I can understand the preparation is very time consuming. It sounds like something that might be surprising to a lot of students too, that it takes such a long amount of time to do that preparation. So speaking of preparation and why they took so long, can you share with us a little bit about the types of interviews that you encountered in the process? Were they all technical in nature?
So most of my interviews were definitely technical, and most of the questions were from algorithms and operating systems. But I'd also say all my interviews started with like a general behavioral question, something like "Tell me about yourself," which I definitely think is equally important because it creates a link between you and the interviewer, and also the interviewer gets to know whether they'll be able to work with you in the future. But yeah, almost all my interviews were very technology centric.
That's not surprising, right? As we would expect. So one of our students asked when you started the preparation for, I guess, for the interviews, but maybe also for the job search. When did you start that preparation?
I started my preparation in the beginning of third semester, basically. As soon as I was back after my internship, uh, as soon as I was back after my internship, I did not convert my internship, and I think I was in a little bit of panic state about my full time because I had like 6 months to get a job. So apart from applying for the jobs, I also started my preparation from right then itself. I think in that matter, I had like a very nice group wherein all of us were already ready to start preparing and start applying. And so, yeah, I think I started my preparation in the beginning of third semester.
And that was for the full-time search process. So if you're a first year student and you're undergoing the internship interview process, that seems like a long way away, but certainly you may have interviews that will take place when you're interviewing for internships as well. Diksha, I had another question that came in, and that was how to prepare for the interviews. What were the techniques and practices that you thought were most effective in your preparation? And certainly that could go for preparing for either internship or full-time.
So most of my preparation was on lead code, especially for the role of software development. Uh, Almost all the algorithmic questions are already in lead code. So I used to do a lot of lead code practice, and I used to practice lead code with my friends. I believe that working with your peers definitely helps you prepare better than you doing it alone. So LeetCode was one of the platforms I used. The second one was Pramp, PRAMP.com. There I could like have telephonic mock interviews. So that helped me a lot. The third thing that helped me was like when I was in my third semester, we started this program wherein we were taking mock interviews for juniors. So in that process, not just that like we were helping the juniors, but they were also helping us because the mistakes that they generally did it basically told us what not to do in an interview. So I would say LeetCode, Pram.com, and like discussing all the questions with peers. That was basically what I did for my preparation.
That's great, and definitely we're going to replicate that program that we were so fortunate to have Diksha and some of her friends to start last year. So if you're currently a student at NC State and are looking to prepare for either internship or full-time technical interviews, we're about to start up some small groups. It'll be after the career fair. But I certainly am looking for second year students who, like Diksha last year, is willing to serve as a facilitator in that practice, knowing that, as she just mentioned, that she got a lot out of that practice of leading the practice with others. It was very beneficial to her as well. So thank you very much for initiating that program. I'm looking through some more questions. Looks like some folks are interested about where you did your internship and how the process might have been different when you were looking for the internship versus the full-time.
Yeah, so I did my internship at Facebook. The interview process specifically was, I think, simpler during internship. I only had like 2 telephonic interviews during my internship. So the process was kind of the same. You apply for the job or an internship, and you get a call from the recruiter. The way it was different was for internship, you have lesser number of technical interviews. And sometimes for some companies, I did not even have like technical interviews. Like for LexisNexis, I did not. I had most of my interview was behavioral question. But for full time, it's generally like you have first a coding round, and then you get like telephonic interviews, and then you go for an on-site. So for full time, you definitely have to go for an on-site, and there you have like again 4 rounds of coding. So that's how it's different, how internship is different from full time.
Right, so it's a little less involved, which is good. You get a chance to warm up to that a little bit. I hope everybody's video is still working. It may be my Wi-Fi at home, but I'm seeing it looks like my video is not coming through right now. So if you guys can see us, if everything looks okay, hopefully, will you just chime in and say it looks great? And then Tam is going to help me make sure that I get some of these questions because they are coming in pretty rapidly. You guys are great. This is wonderful. So one person asked about the right time to apply for full-time.
Yeah, so I think that you should apply as soon as possible. I think a lot of us are very hesitant that we don't want to apply without preparation. But particularly for me, when like I just get lazy when things are not over my head. Like unless I have a deadline, I do not work for it. So I think you should just apply for it, not be hesitant towards, okay, I don't have preparation. I think I will not do great. I think you should just start applying like again as soon as possible. Probably now is the time you should apply.
Great. I totally agree with that. I think too you may miss out on some opportunities. One of the things, Diksha is working at a company, Google, that has a fairly early process for both internship and full-time. And if you miss that window of opportunity with that company, that door is going to close for you. So I would, definitely say, don't wait to apply. Definitely go ahead and get that application out there because you certainly don't want to miss out.
Right.
We had another question come in related to projects on their resume and just concern about maybe not having enough of those. And so was, having those projects on your resume, did you feel, Diksha, that was a real differentiator that you had whenever you applied? I mean, clearly you've worked at a couple of really big name places. So do you feel that was what gave you the attention from the employers, or was it something else?
Yeah, so I remember I was in the career fair for internship, and one of the recruiters from Facebook, he looked at my resume and he just looked at it for like, I think 10 seconds, and he asked me to leave. That was probably because I and everyone else in my class had the same projects. So I definitely think having a project outside of your coursework does definitely help. For me, what I believe I got internship at Facebook was because I used to go for a lot of hackathons. And because I had one project which was under a professor and it was not related to coursework. I also had a prior work experience. I know a lot of people who come for masters do not have work experience and they always have this kind of confusion, a dilemma as to what they should put in their resume. I would say that in case you don't have so many projects, it's always good to work on an open source project and probably include that in your resume because that is what differentiates you from other people, right? So, yeah, having other projects apart from your coursework does help in getting a call.
That's wonderful. I've been having this conversation a lot this week. As you might imagine, we're doing a lot of resume preparation right now, getting ready for the career fairs. So certainly your advice is well taken. I think a lot of the things that we talk about is being able to show you have this genuine interest in the field. And certainly by participating in open source projects and hackathons and things like that that are outside of your school and your work, that's a great way to show your interest. So thank you. That's great. Other questions have been around, like, are there specific languages that you found more of your questions, the technical questions centered around, or were they mostly technical algorithms? That was another question that was asked.
So most of the technical interviews that I had was not language specific. The interviewers were more open to any kind of language, either it's C++, Java, or Python, or any of these. It's mainly like these three languages, Java, C++, Python. What they more care about is your way of tackling a problem. It's basically the algorithms that are involved. And plus, if you're using any particular language, how strong a hold you have on that language. Like since I was more comfortable with C++, I gave all my interviews in C++. I wrote all the algorithm code in C++. So interviews are definitely language agnostic, but if you have a language in mind, you should definitely have a strong hold over it.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. So, I'm kind of wondering too, if you had any experiences where you felt like things didn't go great in your interview process, if there was something that happened in your technical interview, maybe you didn't know how to handle a situation, and maybe how you handled it whenever that happened to you.
So I think during my internship interviews, I had an interview call from Amazon, and it was fairly at the initial time, like I think it was early September or October, and I think I was not prepared enough. So my interviews went really bad. Like they asked me a question, I fumbled a lot, I could not come up with a solution, and the thing that I blame it on is basically my preparation. I did not have enough preparation. Apart from that, I think that I also had like another interview call, and they asked me for like C++ specific questions. I was not good at it as well, and I was not able to answer a lot of questions. But I think in the end, when I showed that curiosity of knowing how they know so much, that definitely helped me because I did get a call. I did get the offer after that call. That is probably because I did show the curiosity, as in how they know so much and how I could acquire that knowledge. So there definitely comes into picture few behavioral things as well, right? You do not have to be technically perfect. People just want to see that you're ready to learn, you're passionate about the things that you want to do, and how receptive you are as well.
That is great. That's wonderful advice, because I certainly know we're all going to make mistakes in the process. So, and just to kind of explain too, I think you all did a great job of this. during the practice that you helped with last year, you really helped kind of coach the students along and would give them a hint whenever they maybe got stuck in the process. Obviously, this was practice, so you were very actively coaching the students through the process. But did that happen for you in real life? If you were stuck on a problem, would the interviewer either give you a hint or an example? Was that something that was commonplace?
Yeah, so all my interviews, whether it be Google, then I had another one with LinkedIn, then Bloomberg. I think all the interviews were, it was basically like a conversation. It was not like, okay, you have a question and you have an answer. It was definitely not like that. It was a discussion between me and the interviewer. And I literally felt for all my interviews that we were both working on it together. So you need not worry about whether the interviewer is going to help you or not, because they will definitely, like, since like it's basically like a collaborative process, and it's not like every question has a definite answer. Even when you are giving like interview, like if you're giving a solution to a technical question, they do not expect you to come to the most optimized solution in the beginning itself. They want you to start with like probably brute force and then go and optimize it a little more and then a little more. They just want to see how your thought process is in the whole interview process itself.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. So somebody was asking specifically about LeetCode and how much time you suggest they should complete questions in that, and what was the improvement graph for you?
Yeah, so LeetCode, as far as I remember, I used to not be able to do even one question. And sometimes when I used to do it alone, I used to get very lazy and I used to directly open the solution and then copy the solution and try to like learn it or something like that. But that definitely didn't work for me. Eventually, what I started doing was we basically sat down in groups, like 5 people. We sat down together. We took up a question together, and then we all thought about the solution alone. Like we had our individual solutions. Then after half an hour, we all shared with each other what we thought about. So that definitely helped, because for the same problem, we had like 5 solutions. And second thing is, you won't get bored as well, right? Like you will not have like just sitting alone and just solving questions. You'll be engaged as well. The graph for me particularly was I used to take like an hour and a half for one question, and then slowly it kept going down, because I used to not just like copy the solution and then paste it. Another thing that I did was when I used to do lead code questions, I used to first try to figure out the solution on my own. If I don't find out the solution, I used to look at the discuss section, only see what the other people have explained, try to understand the explanation and come up with my own code. So that definitely helped me too. And eventually, like for my Google interviews, I was able to solve the same kind of questions in 45 minutes. So yeah, I think I did have like fairly good improvement from like 1.5 hours to 45 minutes.
That's great. That's very exciting to hear the progress, and also to hear that the group process was even more helpful than just doing the work alone. I think that's great, and I'm glad we're going to continue working that model for that reason, for sure. Had a question about if the interviews were more role specific that you had, or were they a little more generalized?
Yeah, so none of my interviews were role specific. All of my interviews were very general, and it was just on algorithms and operating systems. So I would say like just focus on algorithms and operating system, and everything will just come into place. There was one interview that I had which was role specific, and I had questions particularly in C++ for that. But then most of my interviews were very generic.
Great. That's good to know. They can do some general preparation, and it'll help them with any of the technical roles they may be applying for. That's good information. Another question was also regarding questions. Did you face any that were more like logical questions, like maybe math puzzles or anything like that, or were they more just the algorithms?
So I did have some of the general puzzle type questions as well. And I would say for that, there are a lot of forums on web where you can see some of these puzzle questions, and you can definitely search before going for any interview. You can definitely search what kind of questions are asked by that company. I remember particularly for Microsoft, I had like a few aptitude questions wherein they were asking questions like there are these egg problems, and then there are these rope problems, which are the weight problems, which are very common. So I did definitely have aptitude questions as well.
Great, thank you so much. That's good information as well. And just to follow up, I'm trying to work through these, Diksha. My apologies as I get through some of these questions. Somebody asked about like using Python because it has many ready-to-use functions as opposed to something like C++ that you used. And are you allowed to use those in technical interview questions? I guess they're trying to get a sense of, would you have used Python too if that was an option for you, or is it just a comfort level piece for you?
So they do allow you to use libraries, and they're definitely not concerned about whether you're using libraries or you're not using. All they care more about is basically whether you're able to come out with an algorithm, basically come out with steps you would take to come up to the solution. In C++ as well, you have those libraries that you can use. Definitely Python is, again, a higher language, and Python coding does make it simpler. But since I was more comfortable with C++, I made sure I just kept practicing in C++. But you can definitely use Python. In probably few interviews, they specifically tell you that, okay, you're not allowed to use libraries. And that can happen in the case of Python as well, right? Like you might have to write down the code for that library itself. So for most of the algorithmic questions, you can definitely use the libraries. And if I knew how to write program in Python, I would definitely go with that. And that's one suggestion I would give to anyone who is starting to code recently, like just start with Python.
That's great advice. Great advice. I think that's definitely the kind of insight students need to hear. I had another question about if you had any advice related to preparation around operating systems. Are you familiar with any resources? I think you really focused more on the development side of things, but I didn't know if there were things maybe you knew about that, or resources that your friends found helpful that might have been focused on a different area within the field.
Yeah, so for operating system, I forgot the name of the book, but there's this really, I can probably forward the name of the book to you, and you can probably send it out to all the students. That book was definitely very good. They had explained all the concepts of operating system in a really good way. Apart from that, I think just knowing about, like, if you had a course on operating system, that will also definitely help you. I think the place where operating system comes in use is basically having the level of understanding of optimizing even algorithmic questions. Like once I had given an interview on some algorithmic question, and I started talking about caches to the interviewer, and I remember the interviewer got really impressed that, okay, she can do optimization on the level of caches. For the for the resources, I can probably send the resources to you, and then you can probably forward it to the students, if that's okay.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Thank you very much. I think we can share the information of what that was helpful. I had a question coming in that asked if you had work experience prior to your graduate studies, and if yes or no, did that affect your ability to handle the difficulty, or did it affect the difficulty level of the questions, or you in the search process at all?
Yes, so I did have work experience. I was working for Goldman Sachs in India, and I think it did help me get calls. Um, I had seen a lot of people who had come directly after their undergrad for master's program, and they comparatively got lesser calls than I had. But that said, I think I've seen a lot of people who have come directly after college, after undergrad to masters, and still been placed to like great places like Facebook, Google, Amazon. So the way Goldman Sachs helped me was I was again since I'd worked in C++ at Goldman Sachs, it was definitely easier for me to prepare in the same lines. And since I was in the work environment and I did kind of some algorithmic stuff at Goldman Sachs, it did help me in that way as well. So yeah, my work experience did definitely help me.
Great. That's very helpful information, but and also encouraging that, that your colleagues in the program who maybe didn't have experience also ended up, most of them at really great places too. So that's really good to hear. Another question came in that said, how important were referrals in getting interview calls?
Yeah, so I think asking for like getting referrals is definitely it speeds up the process. And if you have friends, colleagues, anybody who can provide you referrals, do not hesitate to ask them for giving you a referral because it does speed up the process. But yeah, there were a lot of companies in which I did not have referrals and I still happened to get a call. So it's not everything, but it does definitely help in speeding up the process.
That's great. Thank you. And one of the things I share with students a lot of times too is that you can always ask for advice and tips, even if you don't feel comfortable asking that person for a direct referral. And then they might offer to refer you after you have some conversation with them and they better understand your interest within the company, then they maybe feel more comfortable doing that. So I think that, your point about, making sure you stay connected to your friends who are in your program is a real key, because those people are going to offer you insight, even if they don't directly lead to a referral, for sure. Let's see. I have a question. I don't know if you have good information on this, Diksha, but I'm going to ask. And it's about data science for students who are interested in data science, but maybe lack work experience in that field. Do you know anything about, ways they could prepare for interviews and maybe the types of questions that they might be asked in that area?
So I actually don't have a lot of information about this, but I know a few friends who have been on this track and they have actually got jobs on that track. Uh, as far as I remember, they used to do some kind of preparation again on lead code and all of that. But most of the questions they used to have was very it was basically case study centric. So like the companies used to ask them case studies and they had to come up with a solution, come up with a data model. So I actually have very less information about it, but this is what I know from what I have talked to my friends.
That's great. That's helpful. That's more information than probably a lot of people had. So that's great. Thank you. Another one of our students asked about what difficulty level problems they should focus on within LeetCode. Their impression was that Google's interview questions are very tough, so they wanted to know what level of practice they need to have.
Yeah, so for internship, I would say doing like medium level questions is good enough. I would say Do touch upon hard questions as well, but medium level questions should be enough. For full time, it's mostly like the questions are more relevant to hard questions. So what I used to do is whenever I used to have like a 10-minute break or a half an hour break, I used to touch upon the easy level questions as well, because the hard questions were based upon like 4 easy questions combined together. So if my foundation was right, like basically easy questions were the foundation for me, and then the hard questions were mostly based on it. Talking about Google interview, I wouldn't say like they were the toughest. It is basically if out of all the questions on lead code, you touch upon each area like backtracking, dynamic programming, BFS, DFS. If you at least do one question in each of these areas, it'll definitely help you in getting to a solution. Because none of the questions, like I said, none of the questions will be directly picked out of lead code and given to you. It'll mostly be a work around the questions that are there in lead code. So yeah.
Thank you. That's great insight. And I love that you talk about how it's all foundation. Everything that I have heard, seen, read, over the last couple of years relating to technical interviews is that it's all about this foundation knowledge that you have and being able to focus on the fundamentals. So I think that's, really, really great advice. Had a question that came in that said, how many companies should I target if I am doing a full-time job search? So if you could, Diksha, just maybe share, what your experience was, how many places you applied, but then also maybe what your friends did, because certainly I'm sure you talked to them a lot about where they were applying as well.
Yeah, so I'd say that I used to apply a lot, but then for me, the most important thing that just give me 1 second. Yeah, so for me, the most important thing was preparing itself, because, like I said, that converting the one call that you get is more important. But then, like I said, after one question or two questions, I used to get really bored. And that is the time I used to use to apply to companies. So do not give so much time to the companies so that you don't even prepare for the interviews. Just split up your time. There's nothing like targeting these many companies. Just like apply to whatever companies that comes in your mind. Like there's definitely not a particular number like 20 or 30 or probably 100 or 200. It's just like I think preparation is more important than applying itself.
Thank you. That's, again, I think really useful. I think it's easy these days to apply so many places, and it can get very overwhelming. But certainly knowing where you want to apply and focusing on that can be a really great strategy as well. Okay, so what courses other than operating systems and algorithms do you recommend that might help us for an interview?
Yeah, so I think all the courses that are there at NC State does help you somewhere. Like I had a course on parallel systems, and whenever I was able to link up what I have learned in that course in an interview, I think the interviewer they used to get like really impressed as in how I can link what I've learned to what they're asking me right now. So I was more focused on system development, like parallel systems, operating systems, compilers, optimization. But then my friends have actually worked on like different areas. Some have worked on data science, some have worked on storage, some have taken courses related to networking. So I think it depends on your interest. Particularly for interviews, I think algorithms is the most important one, and operating system as well. But there are some interviews which might be like role specific, and they might ask you what project you worked on as well, right? So I definitely do not have an answer as to, okay, you can take A, B, and C, and that'll help you in interviews. But yeah, whatever you're interested in. For interviews, it's specifically algorithms and operating system.
Perfect. Thank you. We are really getting close to time here, and I want to be respectful of Diksha's time. She's been so gracious to be with me for the last hour because we had to get online early to set up. So there's just a couple more things I'm hoping you can kind of touch on and then give some final advice, Diksha. I know you had some thoughts coming into this of what you wanted to share. So I've had a couple of questions related to, do you have a one-page resume, or is your resume longer than that?
Definitely, you should have only one page of resume, because when you go in career fair, all like they shouldn't be flipping pages and wasting their time in that as well, right? And I think what you should include in that one page resume is your most important project. Sometimes people have different resumes for different companies, and there's no harm in doing that because you're definitely applying for a role, right? So yes, it should be a one pager, and I believe in that. So yeah.
Thank you. That's great. I'm glad to hear we agree, you and I, on that one. So the next thing was about offers, and I'm thinking that this may have been something that you encountered related to the timing of offers. And we all know that these things rarely sync up, where all the places that you want to get offers from, give you the offers in time for you to think about them all and get back to everybody before the deadline. So can you just talk a little bit about that process in your particular perspective?
Yeah, so I think, yeah, you might get like multiple offers, and you might be in a dilemma as in which one to choose. You might not get enough time to accept an offer or probably decline an offer. So I would say that if you get an offer and you're still waiting for some other offer, try to delay it as much as possible. Like, just tell them that okay, and it's okay to be open about it, and telling the recruiters that yeah, I am waiting for another offer. So if you could give me some more time. And most of the time the recruiters are very flexible about it, and they do give you like the time that you have requested for. Eventually, if they do not agree upon being so flexible, in that case, I think you do have to make a call, as in whether you're confident about the other offer or whether you just want to take this up.
Yeah, it's never easy. It's a good problem to have, first of all, to have a job offer. So you're certainly starting from a great place for sure when that happens. And, for all the students out there, please know this is something that I do assist with when those individual situations come up. Please feel free to reach out to me, and we can talk about how to handle that situation individually. I'm very happy to assist with that. And with that, I'm going to let Diksha close and give any remaining advice that she would like to give, and then I'll close the session.
Yeah, so for final advice, I would say like I would want to break up my advice in like two steps. One is basically getting calls. I would say apply as much as you can. Obviously, you do need to leave some time for preparation as well. Second is it's good to go for events like conferences, events, then hackathons, because I know they do say apply online, but then there are some companies which have on-site interviews as well, right? And then I got my internship because of because of a hackathon after all. The third is ask for referrals. Remember that when you get into a company, your peers get some amount of it as well. Plus, you don't have to be best friends with them. Like Leslie said, you can also ask for advice, even if you don't want to ask for referrals. Second advice I would say is more concentrated towards preparation. Do I would say that you should do a lot of lead code. I already told you how interacting in groups, having peers work together helped me a lot. And taking mock interviews, giving mock interviews also helped me a lot. So do that as well. Also, never hesitate to do anything, because I believe that no is always the default, right? All you can try to do is make it a yes. So that's my final word of advice.
That's great advice. Thank you so much. Your thoughts were wonderful tonight. I know I'm seeing all the thanks pour in via the chat now. I can tell that a lot of people enjoyed it tonight. Thank you again, Diksha. We are really in your debt for your time. And if you enjoyed the perspective tonight, I hope you will come back and join us tomorrow. We have another wonderful alum, Shivani, who's going to be with us, who Diksha knows very well too. And so I know that her perspective is going to be slightly different. She's going to have some great advice as well. So look forward to seeing you all tomorrow night, same time, and I will send out a link just as I did tonight. So thank you again. I'm signing off. Have a great evening, everybody.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.